The reality of a road trip. Is it as sexy as you think? But more importantly, are you prepared? That's coming up next with Unhitched with the Concrete Camper and Glamper.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Unhitched with the Concrete Camper.
And Glamper, I'm Mekka.
This is Reggie. We finally made it back from our trip up to Wisconsin. I know we had talked a little bit about it, but we wanted to just kind of talk about how we prepared to go, some unexpected things that we came across, and I think it definitely was a lot more work than I anticipated.
As they say, be careful what you wish for, because I'll admit, have been saying, I would love a road trip. I would love a road trip to Wisconsin. I would love a road trip to Milwaukee. And I finally got my wish.
Yes, folks, the quarterback delivered.
And now that we are well rested and have returned home, let's just say it maybe was not as inconsistency of what I just said, sexy, as I thought it was going to be in my head.
Yeah, well, living in your head can be special. It's a special place. So realistically, we spent probably about 24 hours driving one way. Right.
And then let me also put this disclaimer out. We had a phenomenal time with the family. Great time once we got there. So all of these comments are in relation to the headed to Wisconsin and then the return trip once we got inside of the car and towed the RV. So I just want to say that because the trip itself was fantastic.
Right. I mean, it was great to spend time with family. Honestly, I hadn't been back home to Milwaukee in 3 years. So pre-pandemic was the last time I went, and we finally were able to carve out some time and make it a priority to go home and see my parents, my family, and my sister and her family. And so it was great. It was great to spend time.
And shout out to the girls. Hello.
Yeah, hey, girls. So, one of the big things I think getting started when we were looking at this, we had said we were going to do this probably back in, was it March, April?
About March, April, when we really made it. We had been contemplating it for a while, and then I would say April.
Yeah.
We finally said, okay, it's solidified. We're moving forward.
Right. So the big thing is, many of you know, when you're preparing for a trip, you got to plot it out on the map, and it's a little bit different just driving your car and getting there as opposed to towing your rig with you. So what we did, we started out with just using Google Maps like everybody else probably would be. And the big thing was I did not want to go through downtown Chicago. I don't think anybody really wants to go through with a rig if you can avoid it. So Mekka was intelligent enough to find a app. What is it? RV Life GPS app, I think, right?
Yes, RV Life app. And I had used it maybe about a year or so before. And at the time, I was not using it properly. And so because of that, meaning that when you go into the app, they ask all the pertinent questions about your rig, size, style. I skipped that step. And so I think as a result, the information at the time that I was receiving was in alignment with Google Maps. And so I felt like it was not something that I needed. But I would say day one into this trip, we quickly realized that a number of things, but I would say top of mind was the route and how long it was going to take us to get there. It was a little bit off when we were looking at Google Maps in comparison when we made that decision once we got to Tennessee to do the RV Life app.
Yeah. And I mean, the trip to Tennessee, so we took off from Georgia and we headed out to Two Rivers Landing in, I think it's pronounced, Sevierville, Tennessee. So
super cute RV resort. And if you watch our current video, we'll take you around on a tour of it. But just wanted to say it was a perfect overnight stop and somewhere that we definitely would consider revisiting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good option if you can't get into like Margaritaville. If you wanted to go to Margaritaville in Sevierville. There is actually this Two Rivers Landing RV resort, and it reminded me a lot of Destin West.
Yeah, you said that of just kind of the quaintness of it,
Right.
the configuration of the sites, and
Yeah.
then we've seen the same similar trees that were budding in between the sites. So yeah, you definitely got that same Destin West type of vibe.
Yeah, and the one of the hosts, I mean, he was very engaging, just an overall great guy. Was very helpful. Shared some education on Two Rivers and the connection, and we'll kind of share some of that when the video comes out here for you guys to see and kind of hear some of the insights that he shared with us. But just a great overall nice stopover. It could be a destination for you too, given everything that happens around in that Tennessee area.
And so that really was part of the planning of when we first decided, like, hey, we're going to do this. What's going to be our approach? And so the first thing that we started to do is plot out the direction and the map that we wanted to take. And that ultimately determined where we stayed. And so because we were familiar with that area, that Pigeon Forge area, the particular location we actually had driven through when we went to Margaritaville earlier this year. And so that was very helpful and I think comforting because we had some familiarity with it when we arrived and it was close to the highway. And then our second location, we identified that simply by mileage and availability.
Yeah, and I'd hopped online and we were looking for something that maybe offered a few amenities, nothing major. We weren't looking for resort style, but we did come across, it was called Rising Star Casino Resort, and that was in Rising Sun, Indiana. So that was probably a good, 7 hours, maybe 8 hours from Tennessee.
Yes, and another good example of we had not fully engaged RV life at that point. And so we had bad directions.
Yep, you're
right. And we were sent in the wrong direction off by like maybe 30 minutes or so. And we pulled off on a rest stop and realized that our GPS was suggesting and recommending that we go off the main highway onto, it started off as a 4-lane.
Yeah.
And then it turned into like a 2-lane. And then you're going through Kentucky. And we were just concerned about what was ahead of us. And I think that's really the moment we had talked about it. But I think in that moment we decided once we get some reliable Wi-Fi, we will download this app and do a better job of navigation. Because before then, we were just going off of Google Maps and kind of a very casual tracking, I would say, of the trip.
Yeah, because I mean, the whole point for us was really to stay on, a highway. There's no fun in getting off on some back roads, and you never know what you're going to run into.
Especially
taking 2-lane roads.
Yeah, that type of the country with all the hills, the mountains, gorgeous scenery, but just the uncertainty of hauling an RV. We were just not into it.
Right. So we did arrive there, spent one evening there, and I think that's when the weather may have started.
Yeah, and then I would just say even before we arrived, another mishap of Google when we were going in the downtown area because the Rising Star Casino was probably, about 20 minutes off of the highway?
Yeah, I mean, we thought it was just a quick off the highway, but you had to go through downtown Rising Sun in Indiana.
I keep saying Star. Yeah, it's
the casino.
Oh, okay.
Was named Rising Star Casino Resort in the town of Rising Sun, Indiana. There's a lot of rising going on. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think we thought it was going to be a quick trip just off the highway and stop and drop, but that wasn't the case. We really got to see some farmland country out in Rising Sun.
Yeah, and so when we probably about 10 minutes before we arrived at the resort, because we didn't realize the way that we came, it was off of a 2-lane highway, a rural 2-lane highway. The GPS took us over this, for lack of a better term, a vintage iron, maybe a historic bridge that was super tight. It was definitely nowhere for 2-lane traffic and us hauling an RV. And thankfully, we were not in a fifth wheel or something taller, because that would have created a whole nother situation. And so it was just all of these small reminders of like, hey guys, you need to sit down and you need to really look at some RV friendly directions. And that's when we did that once we arrived. I would say the other thing, as you mentioned, weather was a factor. So when you're planning, being weather aware. I know you guys are probably saying like, it's a broken record, not the weather again. We get it, Mekka, high winds, but we were traveling during this sort of this system that was just moving through like the Midwest, North, coming down through the South.
Yeah.
And I feel like we caught all parts of it, because even before we arrived in Tennessee, we had to pull off because we were starting to get severe weather alerts, a lot of lightning. And so before, not even an hour and a half into our trip, we decided to pull off at a truck stop to let that system go away.
Yep.
And then when we arrived in Indiana, it was much more significant because they had a lot of severe weather alerts. And then we were told the night before we had arrived, they actually had some serious weather that flooded a couple of the campsites at that location. And so it was a whole thing.
Well, I mean, to the point where I don't know if there's any Swifties out there, but Taylor Swift was scheduled to be in downtown Cincinnati for a concert, and to the point where they decided to go ahead and move her concert up an hour because they were so fearful of the weather system that'll come through downtown that they didn't want the patrons and the fans to be out downtown in the middle of the system. So they figured they'd give at least an hour buffer for them to get out of the concert and get to where they're going. So, I mean, I know weather, Mekka, but I mean, it was truly something that where you have, an entertainer, a large entertainer like that, and they're adjusting the start of the concert up an hour. That's significant. And
then even the next morning, we were delayed slightly, but as they say, God works in mysterious ways. When we were going through north of Indianapolis, yet again some weather, and we were receiving these crazy weather alerts. And we went through, we were ahead of a system in these clouds that we had never seen before. It was gorgeous, but it was so eerie, and it was just Twilight Zone.
It was almost like, probably dating myself, like Aliens or Independence Day, where you're seeing things just hover in the sky. It was surreal. It definitely was. I'm like, let's just keep pushing. Let's hit it.
And then, once we got settled and ultimately made it to Wisconsin, that part of the trip was all rain. But when we got settled, we turned on the news, and in Chicago, that particular system that we were driving through caused significant flooding in downtown Chicago. I think they said, was it 9 inches of rain?
Yeah,
like
something like that.
Like in a very, very short period of time, people were getting stranded on roads and having to abandon their cars. And so even still, with all of our experiences with severe weather, this was still different, and it was still very, very, very intense.
Yeah. And what also didn't help is just kind of the construction zones that were going on. Like, I didn't realize, so much construction was going on in the state of Illinois, crossing over into the border of the state of Wisconsin. As I like to say, the pucker factor was up for all of us. You're reduced down to 2 lanes, concrete barriers, and you gotta pay attention. You should always be paying attention, right, when you're hauling something or traveling with your rig, but that in itself is stressful enough where it even causes more, drain on your body. Driving is one thing, then you're putting a rig behind you, then you confine and restrict your lanes that you got to drive in. You got to be focused. So, yeah, that was a heck of a.
And then I'll say I had a failure. I feel like I failed as a good co-pilot. I failed as a good partner because, again, the vision was I was ready. I was going to drive a couple hours each day to give you some relief. We had our plan. We were ready to execute. We pulled off. I pulled onto the highway, and then bam, construction. 4 lanes went down to 2 lanes, went down to these little minuscule travel lanes where there was no give and the 18-wheelers were coming by, and I self-admittedly had an internal panic attack. And I consider myself, I'm a strong person. I push myself. I'm up for the challenge. But that I just simply could not do.
Well, I mean, you went strong for a good 10 minutes. You gave me a 10-minute break. I mean, I truly appreciate it.
I dug deep, y'all, for that 20 minutes, that 10 minutes. I dug so deep.
Well, the only reason 10 minutes lasted because there was no exit.
Right.
So you kept pushing, though. You did well, 2 hands on the wheel, and we got to another exit and got off and swapped out. So appreciate the relief.
So then I just became the Uber co-pilot. Like, can I wipe your mouth? There's a crumb on you, sir. Like, what can I do? Can I give you a 1-arm massage? Like, yes, it was just, that was just a good example of things that you couldn't control. And we had all these visions of Sugar Plum dancing in our heads, and, our travel day was going to just be so magical. And it just turned out being just a little bit more intense than what we thought. And then I would say food on the way there was not a huge problem because I was trying new things. I was prepping. I had shot before we left, small things, because again, you've heard us mention that our refrigerator, it takes a while for it to warm up. And so on a trip like this, when we know we're traveling multiple days, we knew that overnight that our refrigerator was just not going to cool down quick enough for us to put any real perishable items in there. And so we kept it small. And so I made cute little pinwheel sandwiches. I had hummus. I had kind of like a nice little mobile charcuterie board in my snackle box. I was very proud of myself, at least on the way there.
Yeah. I mean, the food was good. It was accessible. It was easy to, eat while you're driving. So, all good. So you did a great job on that.
Well, thank you. Again, I keep saying not everyone can be a proper co-pilot.
Yeah.
And then I would say outside of that, when you're thinking about traveling for long distances, gas, did you ever have a fear of running out of gas, or was just the configuration of the gas stations?
So I think it was more the configuration of gas stations, but I will admit I did take a gas can with me because I know from previous times traveling, in a car, we'd hit like Southern Illinois, and it's like I couldn't find a gas station sometimes, but the app helped. I think the gas stations were just a little bit smaller, so you could get in, or they're a little bit further off the highway. It wasn't as bad, so I might have over prepared on that piece. I never pulled it out, didn't have to use it, but we were pretty good on gas. No,
yeah,
because I like to operate on the rule of thumb that once I hit a half a tank, we start looking to see what's around, what's going to be available, and if we can get off, let's get off and do it then, and then we just keep rolling from there.
Yeah. And then I would say the final thing is I was just not prepared of the toll it takes on your body from the passenger side, of traveling multiple days, 8+ hours a day.
Yeah.
This was the first time that we have gone back-to-back travel days. Like, we've done like one travel day overnight, and then
Right.
you're there and you're staying, and it's glorious. But yeah, it was just, I found myself pulling over and doing stretches, and your body was just.
Well, we're not used to that. I mean,
Yeah.
you get up, you drive a hard 8. And then you get in, you eat, sleep, get back up, do another hard 8, and then sleep, get back up and hit another, 6 to 8. It just depends, and that's just, we're not built for that, essentially. But we are now. We're experienced now. So, I mean, it was an experience.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
And I would say it was probably the quietest we've ever driven because, you get to those periods of time that, I'm normally chatty. You're listening to music. You go through phases. But, hour 7, you're just ready to get there. It's kind of like silence. Don't talk.
I prefer that. Let me focus, man. Let me focus. There's no chitty chain and how's this. Just hey, focus on the GPS. Is it right, is the left? Are we getting off here? Let's
Yeah.
just enjoy the silence and ride. Sorry.
Look, I asked that question in the follow-up questions 4 hours ago. Like hour 8 is like, oh my goodness. But the scenery was good. I
Yeah.
think overall it was really fantastic. And then I think one that I forgot to mention too is that this trip also gave me a better appreciation for tow capacity and weight and just all those factors that go into RVing, because we saw a number of RVs, especially when we would go through the mountains of Tennessee, that were, on the side of the road needing some assistance. We witnessed a blowout of an RV. Thankfully, they were able to pull over to the side of the road very safely, but we just saw the progression of, you saw the smoke, and then you were like, is there something going on with that RV in front of us? And then, the next thing you know, we saw the tread.
Yep.
And then you saw the couple, they were the pack of people. So at least we feel like they had someone there to assist. And then you saw them riding on the rims, and it was that type of thing that was just very, very surreal. That just, as much fun as you want to have, the gravity of, being safe also settled in with this.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be responsible. You gotta know your load, and your payload and capacity. Because I mean, there was going through those Tennessee mountains.
Woo.
There was plenty of big boys, F-350s, pulling, some large toy haulers and things like that had to pull over. And I don't know, maybe the engine was running hot, coolant was running hot, whatever, tires are hot. But I'll say, the wagon had no problem.
Yes.
We had no problems whatsoever. So I was very pleased with the performance of the truck. And Trina May, we got there and came back with all 4 tires on her.
Because she was riding around and getting it.
That's my girl. She she held us down, and we had thank God we had no major issues, no mistakes, no anything. Just constantly checking tires, letting them cool down, making sure tire pressure looks good, all those good things. Just making sure, double triple checking as we ventured from the South to the Midwest and back home again.
Would you do it again?
No,
I concur.
No, I'm not doing that again.
Adventure checked.
Yes.
On to the next one.
Yeah, it's a little overrated. So, but if we had to, then yes. But if for family, but other than that, I think I'll stick to friendly.
Flying the friendly skies.
Yeah, fly the friendly skies. So, all right. Well, I think that's just kind of a recap, guys. We just wanted to go ahead and just let you know, yes, we made it back safely. It was a great event. Definitely enjoy spending time with family. And we'll bring you a video to kind of recap some of the things that we captured while we were there. But other than that,
until next time, we'll continue to chase the sun, sand, and sea
in our RV.